Well, Nathan, I feel like our parenting isn't working anymore, so let's just stop parenting.
This sounds great.
Yeah, we're just
going to head out of town then.
Well, I didn't say we leave our kids, but let's just stop parenting.
This feels counterproductive when we're taping something that's going to be posted on a channel about parenting God's way.
Well, maybe we should just be done.
Let's get into that.
Before we jump into today's episode, we just wanted to share a few things with you. First, we'd like you to like this episode and then subscribe to our podcast. If you're doing that on YouTube, also hit the bell notification so that you know when we post anything new. And then share this with somebody that you feel like this would be beneficial for.
That's right. If you would like to support our show further, we would welcome that. You are welcome to do that at anchor.fm/marriagebydesign to check out your options for supporting the program financially. Otherwise, guys, the links to our social media are always in the description of every video, so feel free to check those out there. And now, let's get to the show.
Hey everybody, I'm Andrea Warnock.
I'm Nathan Warnock, and you've reached us for Family Friday on the Marriage by Design podcast. This is a show that we get out every week and put it out on Thursdays or Fridays, and we talk about what the Bible says about God's plan for family and for parenting, which is potentially not giving up. And we give some practical tips on how we can live that out in our own families and in our own parenting.
So I was having this moment recently where I was thinking on my own parents and kind of how I was parented and that sort of thing. And I was thinking about my teen years. And we have not reached the teen years yet with our own kids. So
a couple months.
Yes, we
launch into that in a couple months.
We technically are just a couple months away from teen years with one of our children. That is crazy to me.
That is crazy. Yikes. And then he'll move out. Like 14.
Oh, I don't know why you say this. So the other day, this is a little funny side story. The other day, Ryan, our daughter, who is 7, Ryan and Nathan were talking, and I don't remember what was being said. You know the story I'm talking about, right?
Yeah. We were just talking, and because I knew you were in the other room, and I said, well, Ryan, once you turn 14, then you're going to have to move on and get a job and find somewhere else to live.
And she knew he was joking, and she's like, no, Daddy, Mommy won't let you do that. And
what did you say, Andrea?
From the other room wife? From the other room said, well, Nathan, I guess you're going to move out when Ryan turns 14.
So if any of you have an extra room in your house in 7 years, I'll be needing a room.
Yes.
Just kidding.
Of course. So anyway, I was thinking about the ways I was parented and thinking about the teen years. And my parents had a really hard time parenting me in some of my teen years. I really started rejecting the way that I was parented and rejecting our faith. And my parents faced a child with a lot of rebellion and one who was untrustworthy and lied to them a lot and, was getting into things that I shouldn't have. And so they dealt with a lot with that. And so I was thinking about all of that, and why am I such a crier? Thinking to where I am now. And this is not at all said in pride or boasting on myself, but it's really a boast on the Lord, because it's only because of the Lord's work in my life. But I'm at such a different place than I was back in my teen years. And I think a lot of adults can say that.
Yeah, I think even those that are I think even secular people would say, yeah, I'm in a way different place now as an adult than I was as a teenager.
Of course.
But I don't think that's exactly what you're talking about, right?
Right. I'm specifically thinking, well, certainly I feel like I'm just would I have, without the faith component, would I have turned into a decent person, a good person? Probably. But
maybe.
Have I turned into a decent person? Maybe.
Let's get into that. Yes, you have.
But the faith component is huge, and it really changed my life, and it's really everything that my life comes back to and is revolved around.
And maybe this is a tangent. Maybe you and I are not on the same page in thinking about this. But as we were thinking about this topic, I almost was thinking really more about the faith component your parents had.
Yeah, right.
And the role that plays. Forgetting even for a minute if you yourself had a relationship with the Lord. The fact of the matter is,
I was talking about
raised.
my current one, though.
No, but I know, but I'm saying you were raised with, like, the journey that brought you back from rebellion and dishonesty and on and on and on and on to.
Yeah, you're just getting ahead of me. Yeah, right.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. I was going there, but go ahead.
I was say the part that brought you from rebellion and dishonesty to slightly less rebellious and slightly less dishonest.
That's not true.
It's been like a 20-year journey. No. No, go ahead. I've totally cut your legs off around you, and I feel bad.
No, you're fine. So anyway, I was thinking about all of that and thinking about the role of a parent to a teen who is just rejecting being parented, rejecting faith, if that's what the way in which you're raising your child, which we hope it is, of course, rejecting even the good things of humanity, and walking off on this path that you see destruction for them, and is a really unhealthy path, and getting into things that they shouldn't, that could have major consequences, and all this stuff. And we've known people whose kids have walked that path for a really long time past their teens, and been and cried out to the Lord for those kids, and years and years and years. So it's not always just the teen years. And and so anyway, I wanted to just have an episode where we kind of talk about all that. And again, we're not in those teen years, so we can't talk about necessarily all of the practical things or all of the things that could be encompassed in this. But from the perspective of children who from the perspective of children who rejected that and walked away from the goodness of the Lord and from the good things that they were parented in, but yet came full circle back to that with an understanding of how great that was, the way in which we were parented, and have a huge respect for our parents, the way in which they still parented us and disciplined us and loved us and pursued us and all that sort of thing in a time that was really difficult. Right.
I mean, I think that's the key, is this perspective is really more not from a, and then we can have, it's not us boasting because we haven't done it yet. So, our son, we pray not, but he could be the next Hitler. Of course we praise not and raise him to not be, but, I think that raises a good point to start on, is the one, I think, advice I can give from a parent perspective is to answer the question, well, how do we make sure our kids don't make those decisions? And I think the answer to that has to be, you can't. And that's okay. Now, that doesn't mean, to riff on the joke we made in the cold open, that doesn't mean we just give up and go, yeah, you guys just do whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there needs to be structure and there needs to be guidance, but if your sense of identity is on your kids not going down an embarrassing or a rebellious or whatever path, then you're really putting yourself in a difficult position, because your children are going to make their own choices.
Yeah, and my actions as a teen was no reflection of my parents or the parenting that I had coming up, up till that point.
Right.
and probably Nathan's too. And so maybe that's encouragement for some parents who are going through that or will or have, that your children are their own people.
Right.
And they get to make their own decisions. As much as we'd like to control them, we can't. And their actions and decisions are not always a reflection of the way in which they were parented.
Right.
Sometimes they are, but sometimes they aren't. And that's the hard thing about raising these kids. As they get older, they have their own thoughts and they start realizing they can act out in their own ways. And
Yeah, it's
that's a
their
tough
life.
thing.
I mean, they realize, hey, this is my life. And hopefully they come to a submission to Christ's point where they realize, hey, even as an adult, it's not your life, right?
Right.
Our calling is to live for Christ. But you know, we all reach this point in adolescence where we go, oh, this is, I have some independence here. I get to make my own choices. If I want to stay up all hours of the night, I'll stay up all hours of the night. If I want to make this bad decision, I'll make that bad decision. And, you know, we hope as parents that we've informed them in that. But at the end of the day, your identity needs to be not in your children. And even if you're watching this and you're like, well, I guess I don't really fully grasp the spirituality side. Even in that case, your identity cannot be in your children, because you're going to put a ton of strain on that relationship, because our kids can tell when they're being pressured to be something. Because, you know, take the example of the high school football or high school baseball prodigy who's now a dad, and he's living out his unlived sports dreams through his kids, and oftentimes those kids end up hating the sport because they can feel that pressure.
Yeah, that's great. So Proverbs 22:6 tells us to train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And you know that train up a child is, of course, in the Lord, but also in, you know, being honorable and in instruction and grace and all of the parts of training. And of course, there's nothing in here that says train up a child until they reject it and then give up. So often I think parents we see sometimes parents in the teen years get to this point where they feel like their parenting isn't working anymore, and they're like, fine, it's just not working. I'm just going to kind of give up on this whole parenting thing. And the kid starts sort of taking over a little bit, and the rules that had been sort of go out the window because it's gotten really difficult. The child's making it really difficult. It's hard to hold the line. And, you know, I think it's, to go back to what we said in the cold open, we can't just give up on our parenting. And I'm so thankful that my parents didn't give up on their parenting.
Me too.
I mean, they still expected me to be truthful. I wasn't so often, but they still had the expectation that I should be and needed to be. And if I wasn't, there was discipline. They still expected. So I got to a point where I told my parents that I was agnostic, which means I didn't know if I believed if there was a God or not. I was at a really rough point in my life. And anyway, so this was in high school, and I told them I was agnostic and I didn't want to go to church anymore. And they told me, you know what, Andrea, out of respect for us, we would like you to just go to church. You don't have to enjoy it. You don't have to really
involved in all the
involve
stuff.
yourself in all the stuff. But we would like you to go and be respectful while you go, just out of respect for us and living in our home.
Yep.
And that, like, I respected that. There wasn't much I respected at that point in my life, but I understood that and I respected it. And most of the time I did that. And I think that was a really great stance for them to take. Like, I'm under their roof. I'm living in their house. Their expectation is that I don't have to take on their faith, but that I at least respect them enough to go to church with them. So they did that. You know, there was still discipline. There was still parenting that was happening, even though I'm sure they were feeling like, I don't see any of the fruits of this parenting. I don't see any fruit at all. I don't see any change. I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And they just kept parenting. And as an adult now, I can look back on that and see that was not wasted. It probably felt to them like it was wasted then, but that they were sowing seeds of being trained up. They were sowing things into my life that came back later to me, you know, and they were still parenting me, which I needed to be parented.
Yeah.
And so that maybe wasn't making a difference to me right at the moment, but it made a difference in my life at a future date.
Right, and that's the actual meaning of that verse that you read. This is one of those verses that is often mischaracterized or misquoted by well-meaning Christian folks, where they're telling the young parents, like, hey, you want to raise your kids up in the Lord, and then when they get older, they'll live that out. But that's not really what that verse means, and the sentence structure of it can be a little bit confusing. But the object of that sentence is the teaching, right? Train up, teach up, whatever your version says. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. It is not doing the training. It is the training.
Yeah, it will not depart from him kind of a thing.
Right. So that's really, if we rearranged it in the way we talk in English, we would say, train up a child in the ways he should go, and when he's old, it will not depart from him. Meaning the training will not depart from him. Meaning all the teaching, discipline, tears, prayers, tender moments that your parents had with you, training you in what it means to be a young woman of God, that never left you.
Right.
And so even when you were trying to run from it, you can't outrun that because it's always with you. And there came a time in your life when you were ready to submit to the Lord, and guess what came rushing back in that? It wasn't a whole bunch of new stuff you read on the internet. Mm-hmm. It was all of the years of discipline and training that your parents had poured into you growing up.
Well, and the reality is it didn't come rushing back. It had been there all along. It was things that I had thought upon all along,
Right.
And
Good.
because it's there. You can't think about the Harry Potter thing where you kind of like take things.
Nice. The pensive?
I guess.
For the pensive.
Where
you pull a little silver memory out?
You pull a memory out. You can't do that, right? We can't pull our memories out and discard them. Sometimes we wish we could because of really awful memories that we have of things, but the good things are planted in there, and your kids can't get rid of those. They're there.
Right.
So
that's right.
So
Spelliamos.
So take hope that these seeds of parenting, these seeds of training up your child in the way he or she should go are always there.
Right.
And your prayers are always with the Lord. He hears them. Right? So that's the important thing about it, is to not give up, not feel like I don't see any results, so I'm not going to keep going in this way.
Right.
I don't see anything changing, so I'm going to stop praying, or I'm going to stop requiring that they go to church, or whatever. We can't give up. That's a huge burden of parenting, is choosing to not give up on our children.
Yeah, it's marathon.
When we feel completely exhausted, because we know that his strength is renewed in us every day.
Right.
And he gives us strength for each new day.
Right.
So
yeah, that's right.
So that's an encouragement for the parents in maybe the teen or preteen years that are really struggling with these kids who are just starting to move off track.
Right. Yeah, some of it would be, if you haven't ever taken some time as parents, to think about, what do we want our children to look like? Right. The school that Jackson and Ryan go to, they have expressed to the parents, the kindergartners, their parents get what they call the portrait of a graduate, which means whether you come into their school at 6th grade, kindergarten, 11th grade, doesn't matter. This is what we're telling you we want your child to look like when they graduate our school in the 12th grade. And I've thought on that as I see it around the school, and thought, as parents, we ought to be doing that too.
Yeah.
Like, what is a portrait when our kids turn 14 and they move out of our house? What do we want?
What is the deal with your 14-year-old thing?
What do we want our children to look like, right? When our children decide to move on from us, what is it that we want our children to look like? And of course, then the most important part of that question is the second question, which is, what are we doing right now to reinforce that? If we want our kids to work diligently, what are we doing right now to teach them what it means to work diligently and hold them accountable for doing that? Because if we're not doing it here at the home, they're not going to do it when they're out on their own.
Right. And that's why at our kids' school, they give this portrait of a graduate in kindergarten. It's because, everything that we're doing then should be pointing back to this portrait of a graduate and helping to get you to that point. Just like at home, we should have the portrait of a graduate of our home, and the way in which we're parenting you and discipling you and disciplining you should point to that portrait that we would like you to be when you leave our home. And loosely held.
Right. But it's important.
But put, having the most important things on there.
Yeah, I mean, because otherwise, when we say train up a child in the way they should go, we focus on and when they're old, they will not depart from it. But it is the training up the child in the way they should go. And I fear that a lot of us as parents, we don't really have any idea it's like that country song now about the guy's goal is to keep his daughter off the pole and his son's out of jail. It's like, if all joking aside, if my idea is, hey, my parenting will be successful if my children aren't serial killers,
right,
then I don't have very much faith in my ability to parent, because that's like the very lowest rung of parenting.
Sure.
Right? Like, we don't want our daughters to be strippers and our sons to be in jail. Like, that's that country song. Mm-hmm. But that really has nothing to do with training someone up in the way they should go.
Right.
That's just preventing them from being the worst of all of humanity.
Yeah. Yeah, it would be really great to think on that. If I want children who know how to study the Bible, then I need to teach them how to study the Bible.
That's right.
If I want children who tell the truth, then I need to teach them the importance of telling the truth.
That's right.
And I need to tell the truth to them.
Right.
And all those sorts of things. Then if I expect this out of my child when he or she leaves my home, then what am I doing to help them understand that and to live that out and fail in that in my own home and learn the importance of it and all that. So,
and why? Mm-hmm. That's big for kids. We got to help our kids understand why
it is.
We're doing these things. Why do we want to teach diligence? Because life is hard, and your life's never, you think it's hard right now in my home. Mm-hmm. Your life will never be easier than it is right now. And so we need to teach you how to be diligent in your life. I mean, whatever the thing is, that's just an example, but
but it's
that's
important. Great. It's good stuff. Well, that's all I have.
Great. That was really good. Thanks for putting that together.
Don't give up on your parenting,
right?
Regardless of the age while they're in your home being raised up. Don't give up on your parenting, even if you feel like, I don't see any results from this right now.
Right. And at the end of the day, if you feel like all else is failing, pray. Mm-hmm. Don't underestimate the power of prayer. Totally. If you're struggling in this area and you just want someone to come alongside you and pray, we'd love to pray for you. Just shoot us an email at marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com. Mm-hmm. We would love to just pray over you, pray over your family. If there's practical advice we can give, great. But more than anything else, just to be able to pray over you, because parenting is difficult, and running the marathon that is parenting is equally difficult.
Yes, it is.
So, babe, thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate you doing
Thanks
that.
for joining.
All right, guys, thanks for being here. I hope you guys all have a great weekend. We'll look forward to seeing you on Monday for another Marriage Monday. Until then, remember, God is for your family. Have a great weekend.